Kevin, I didn't know you took yourself off. Kevin,
I wanted you to do it. I wanted you.
You were going to be on too. I didn't realize I was the only.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Welcome into Kevin and Zach React. We are your sometimes, well, all the time post game, all the time news reaction channel. Zach was doing a lot of crazy stuff before the show with his virtual background because here's what happens. Wait, no, you got to go back more. You got to go back. Are you all the way back?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. There he goes.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah. He's getting, so he.
Guys, this is so embarrassing. It just didn't do the trick while I did it on live. It was working before.
It was. He was all the way blurred out, and so we said that we determined that Zach should do something crazy to intro the show. Although I guess I shocked him when I wasn't there to support him.
Yeah, I did the escalator and I went up and I went up to go, hello, Kevin, and you just weren't there.
Well, that's how the cookie crumbles, and how the cookies crumble for the.
The picture is fine.
Can you believe him? Can you believe this?
The picture is fine, people. I did
it's yeah. That it was on a tilt. It was on a tilt.
It's still tilted, but sometimes things just don't go as planned. Just like the Baltimore Orioles offseason so far, Kevin. Like how I did that. I mean, sometimes. Yeah. When you're hot,
another one in the good transition book for you. We have a couple of bad ones that we won't speak of.
But Kevin, it's the Baltimore Orioles offseason so far. People had high expectations going into winter meetings. I know people, especially in the starting pitching market, everyone was like, "Oh, Blake Snell, okay, Max Fried." Nate Eovaldi, go get one of these guys. Get a big guy. Get a big fish. And all of them are off the market. Every single one of them is off the market. Obviously, Corbin Burnes still on. Could a return to Baltimore be in the cards? I don't believe so. I just don't see it happening. But in wake of the Yankees at first losing Juan Soto, but then signing Max Fried, you get the Red Sox, who are in on everybody, it feels like right now. You have Toronto making moves for Andres Jimenez. Tampa Bay Rays are doing Tampa Bay Rays stuff. They just always field a good team somehow of guys you've never heard of, but you just let them do their thing. AL East is getting better, Kevin, and I'm not sure right now that you can say the Orioles are.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's disappointing for everybody, I'm sure, especially because all of the surrounding Corbin Burnes rumblings have been, oh, well, the Orioles probably getting outbid for their own guy. Who is it going to be? Now, the interesting part of this is a couple of the teams that were supposedly going to be in on Corbin, or maybe not. The Red Sox apparently don't feel very confident in Corbin going over there. The Mets weren't in on Max Fried, and apparently they don't feel confident in Corbin either. And they're not apparently not even looking there. So is this going to come down to the Giants, the Orioles, maybe a sleeper team? I mean, I doubt the Yankees invest another $300 million into. I mean, because again, with Max Fried getting what was it, 218?
Yeah,
over 8.
Over
I mean,
8.
Corbin's going to get more than that. So, do the Yankees really invest in that? So, who is it really a two-team race between the Giants and Orioles? Are there any other teams, Zach, that you could see maybe being in these sweepstakes? Dodgers? I mean,
maybe just simply because I think if they offered him a good amount of money, he'd go there. Arizona could be. I haven't heard anything, but that's where he is. That's where he lives. That's where his family is. So, in that realm, I could see that happening. But I think he ends up with the Giants. I do. I think Corbin Burnes ends up with the Giants. Goes out West Coast. I think the Giants really want him. I think it just works out for everybody. Obviously not the Orioles, but I think the Orioles, unfortunately, are kind of – I don't want to say they're moving past Corbin Burnes, but I get the sense that that's kind of not going to happen. I think they understand that he is probably going to go for a lot of money to a West Coast team.
Yeah, and obviously if that's the situation and Corbin does leave, obviously a pretty big gut punch considering we were talking about, yes, any pitcher on the market probably going to be a downgrade from Corbin, right? At least the ones that are available in free agency. But could you get one of those top guys and then either sign a second one or trade for somebody? Now it's looking more and more. And again, Corbin is not 100% out of the realm of possibility for the Orioles. It just feels like they are behind a team like the Giants in the money they're willing to spend there, or the fact that they just want a draft pick. And the Orioles love draft picks. I know I heard you guys talking about it on the second winter meeting stream last night, where Elias and the Orioles love those draft picks. And so, do I agree with letting Corbin Burnes walk for a draft pick? No. I do not personally. But again, we're here to react to how the Orioles operate. Zach and I aren't running the Orioles. If we were, they'd have won 10 million World Series by now.
Yeah, they would have won them all, Kevin. They
would have had the chat making decisions, right? We would put it up in a poll. Highest donation gets to decide who we sign, right? Like
exactly.
We'd have all of it, right? We'd have all of it.
It would be juggernauts, but we don't. So now we have to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And Kevin, it really does suck to lose a guy like Corbin Burnes because he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. I know people want to point to those 8 games in August, September, where he didn't look good. I mean, he just wasn't, let's call it is. He wasn't a good pitcher for us. He seemed like weirdly, he just went 8 starts where he was just getting shelled. It wasn't, you just felt like something was off, but you take that out where he really was a top 3-2 pitcher in all of baseball. And you go to the playoffs, what does he do? Delivered you 8+ shutout or 1-run innings. He was a total ace in every sense of the word. The bulldog mentality, he wanted to pitch every single inning. He never wanted to come out. The fact that he could shut a team down completely, that when the lights were the brightest, he did show up. He was that guy. So it really is one of those things where he is losing him. It's not something that you can just replace. You can't just bank on, Eflin's going to keep pitching this way. That's just going to be our ace. You need to go out and get somebody. That's why we've talked about, Nate Eovaldi before he went back to Texas. We had talked about Blake Snell, Max Fried. One of them fits there. Now, with everyone else seemingly gone, I don't feel confident in getting Burnes back. It really is where I just look completely to the trade market. That's where you have to make your splash. That's where they have to make a splash here.
Yeah. And I look, Pick Down Sports, appreciate you checking in. What's up? Hopefully all is good. Saying that, look, guys have to want to come to Baltimore. And Zach, we've talked about this, and I know Pigtown, I've heard you talk about it too, where it's like Baltimore is not New York. Baltimore is not LA. And that fact is never going to change, right? That just is what it is. And obviously, you now have an owner with deep pockets, or an ownership group with deep pockets. And I think that is now, because obviously the expectation, Zach, around the Orioles over the last however many years you want to go back is, they're just going to cheap out on guys. They're not going to sign guys. Their payroll is going to be low, and they're going to just try to get by with what they have. Yeah. But now you change ownership groups. You have owners who say they're willing to spend, who, that's really all that we've heard over the last, 8 months, 9 months, however long it's been since Rubenstein and company acquired the team. It's been, hey, we're going to spend, we're going to let this thing go. We're going to make sure this is a competitive team for years and years. But I think the disappointment in that comes with, you see all these star ace pitchers available on the market, right? You have a couple of hot bat names too, and all they had to show for it so far, I'm not saying this is all they're going to do, obviously, but so far, is those 2 guys.
Yeah, and Kevin, like you said, so far, remember the Orioles made the trade for Corbin Burnes in February. Yeah. This is not – the winter meetings on December 10th are not the be-all, tell-all, be-all. This is not it. This is not – the season doesn't start tomorrow. There's still a lot of time left. We've seen trades get made. We've seen free agents. There are so many guys still out there looking. We don't know how half the free agent landscape is even going to play out right now. You know, are some of the top guys gone? Yeah, I don't see the Orioles really making a splash free agency wise with kind of the guys left. None of them really stick out to me as, oh, that's the guy that you can bring in as a free agent and changes everything. That's why I continue to point to the trade market. I think the Orioles have assets that teams like the Mariners would want, and those teams have assets the Orioles would want. You know, I think the Mariners, I've said a million times, they stick out. I know guys point to, you know, Jesus Luzardo is being shot for like the millionth time. His injury history worries me. He hasn't pitched since June 16th. It really is just a sense of, I don't feel panic because, like I said, it's February, but it's more intrigue of, okay, free agency isn't the way that they're going to be able to go. You didn't get Eovaldi. You didn't get Fried. You probably don't get Corbin back. Let's assume in this scenario you don't. You're going to have to now use your internal assets. You didn't want to use money to spend in free agency to lure guys. So you have to use your farm system. You have to go make a trade, make a move. 7 times, I want Luis Castillo. I think that's the guy to go get. I'm going to speak it into existence.
Yeah. I don't feel panic either, right? It's just me. I mean, I'm not out on Corbin or the Orioles until I see that notification come across.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's very likely, but I think I will start to feel more panic once that happens, or if it happens, because you're right. Like, aces don't grow on trees, and obviously you can make a deal and you can make a trade for a guy, but it's going to be a matter of who they bring in, because they need 2 starters, right? That was always going to be the thing, especially if Corbin walks. They need 2 starters. You're obviously going to be downgrading from Corbin if Corbin walks, but then who's the other guy? There are a bunch of trade targets they could go after, and maybe that happens tomorrow. Maybe that happens in a week, a month, 2 months, whatever it may be. But going into the year, especially with the injuries that they have to figure and work their way back into with Bradish and everybody, you need to have people who can stabilize that rotation. I mean, Grayson's the guy that's going to have to step up, you know, and then you kind of have to say, okay, what about Dean? Eflin's going to be a guy that's going to be a mainstay, hopefully, and continue his strong start. Can they rely on Trevor Rogers? You know, did he do enough in the minor leagues to get his swagger back? I'm not necessarily super confident in that one, but you know, we'll see what happens. You know, what's Albert Suarez going to look like? You know, is that going to be a name that can have another magical season? So when you kind of throw together this staff right now, doesn't, you know, it's not uber promising, but that's why it's right now and not in February, to where I don't know what the next couple of days hold, but I just think with so much anticipation, with the winter meetings always being crazy, I think with Juan Soto kicking off with a bang, everything that has happened over these last couple of days, there was a lot of anticipation, especially because we had heard like, okay, yeah, the Orioles, these ace pitchers, like, you know, they really like Eovaldi, and while they might not be in on the Frieds and the Burns, like, okay, we were kind of saying, Zach, if they can get Eovaldi and kind of trade 1-for-1, Eovaldi for Burns, that's a downgrade, but then you go get a second quality starter, like, okay, maybe you're cooking a little bit there, but now Eovaldi's gone. I know I was kind of joking about it in our Discord, but about Jack Flaherty, I don't think anybody in Baltimore wants to see that.
Can't do it. No. I refuse. I'm sorry. I don't care how well he did, how he turned it around. I understand it. I'm happy for him. Won the World Series. Like, good for him. I'm really happy he beat the Yankees. Glad he's doing well. Can't do it here. Because the second we do it, he's going to regress to the dude that was here a year ago. It's just how it would happen.
It just felt like there was such a high floor with Corbin, right? Obviously, second half of the season wasn't as high and really struggled, right, for the most part. And, you know, we've talked about that. But it always felt like, for the most part with Corbin, there was always going to be some level of a floor. That month or two stretch was tough for him in the second half of the year, but I was more than confident, you know, maybe towards the end of his struggle stretch, I was like, man, this is getting really tough. This is getting really tough. But I was always pretty confident that Corbin was going to go out there and be ace quality material. I mean, he was one of the best pitchers in all of baseball over the first half of the season, obviously with the All-Star game nod and everything. Then he kind of just left and was like, okay, I don't really need to be here anymore. I'm done. But we know that family is important to him. We know he's a new father, or at least now new-ish father, considering that happened a couple months ago. And, it wouldn't shock me if he goes back out to the West Coast. I mean, I know that the Giants are a team that obviously we heard was interested in Fried and has been looking to spend. I mean, they just spent already on Willy Adames. So you're kind of thinking, the Giants are trying to build a true contender here, even more so. That obviously is going to hurt the Orioles, but let's look at it this way, Zach. And I want to ask you this because I'm curious about it. Let's just say Corbin leaves. We're left with the rotation that they have right now. Trade market wise, let's say Grayson is your number one in this situation. Eflin is your two. Who on the trade market that is realistic for the Orioles could you say would surpass Grayson for the number one spot in that rotation for a guy that's realistic for them to get? Is there anybody, or do you think they're going for more of a number two?
I mean, if they want to go for the moon and you can convince the Astros to give you Framber Valdez, that immediately is your number one. I think a guy like Luis Castillo would be your number one as well. Crochet would be. I don't want Crochet. Dylan Cease would be. I don't know why. I understand the whole salary aspect of it. They might want to clear the books. I don't get why the Padres are even considering moving Cease after acquiring him. I mean, legitimately anyone from the Mariners. Like it would be Gilbert or Miller would also both be immediately. I would put them as our number one. Literally just call the Mariners, offer them a deal, and be like, just send us back whatever one of those pitchers you want.
Surprise us. We'll pick them up from the airport.
Just send him on the plane. We'll be there. We'll just let us know,
Yeah. Because I think one of the things when the Orioles rotation was healthy, which lasted for about 5 seconds, but when the Orioles rotation.
Do you remember those 3 weeks where we had Burns, Grayson, and Bradish?
Man, I remember we couldn't stop talking about how the rotation was 8 guys deep. And then by the end of the season, we're like, please, they need pitching, please.
If it gets to game 3, we don't know who pitches. We're like, we don't know.
It was bad. But when the Orioles rotation was fully healthy and they had their guys, one of the things and why I loved the Burns trade so much was because it takes pressure off of Grayson and the rest of your staff, and you have that stud ace is your number one spot. Yeah. Man, what a time. What a time.
Bradish was so good, too. He didn't miss a beat.
Yeah. But so to me, if you don't get another number one or someone who you can slot in as your number one behind Grayson and Eflin, I mean, I just think the luxury of having that top three of whoever, then Grayson, then Eflin, I think you're in a really good spot there, especially if you can go out there and get 2 guys.
Yeah.
And then I guess Dean would be your 5 in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? So Dean would be your 5. So you get 2 pitchers. One is an ace. You get Grayson and Eflin as 2-3, however you want to flip those. You get another guy maybe as your 4, and then Dean is your 5.
I still think they need to do the sign one, trade for one. That obviously involves the guy. I've seen some people talk about Andrew Heaney in here. Wouldn't mind him. Also wouldn't mind it depends. If you really want to go, there's the Max Scherzers out there. I don't know if I would test those waters necessarily. But I'm not totally sold on Manaea. I understand the appeal of him. I just personally, I'm not going to sit here and say that getting Sean Manaea, as our number 4 is really helping. Like, it's not going to wow me the way that I thought with Evaldi, I felt like the ceiling was higher, especially in the playoffs. Mania just doesn't give me that same sort of, okay, I can trust him in the big situation.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Mania did, as just what Jabo says, Mania did in fact decline a qualifying offer, so you would have to give up a draft pick. So I don't want Mania.
I feel like at this point, I mean, in my opinion, it is Corbin Burns or bust, like just in terms of that quality of player.
Oh, without a doubt.
And it feels tough for me because not that the Orioles can't be competitive next season, and especially because the offseason is far from over. But it's not to the extent of Juan Soto, obviously. But it's just like, man, you trade for the guy, you give up 2 good prospects, or at least 2 good young players, and wasn't it the competitive? I can never get right the pick they sent. Was it the competitive balance pick?
They sent one of their competitive balance picks.
Okay, so again, you trade those guys, and look, that was worth it, right? It was worth having an ace in your rotation. It was worth that, but to lose that and to have the uncertainty of where they go next, we could be talking again in 2 months, and everything is fine. They go out there, they get another guy that isn't expected to be on the trade block, and okay, that's it. But
yeah,
it's like, I think what's discouraging people, and look, for as little as the Orioles have done, and still Tyler O'Neill and Gary Sanchez, those are 2 moves. Red Sox fans are in absolute shambles right now. Yankees fans, they feel a little better because they got freed, although 8 years is a lot for a guy who's, what is he now, 31 or turning 31?
Yeah, he's turning 31. Though that deal will be good for about 3 years, and they'll have to just eat it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I saw real fast. Who could they trade for Framber or Castillo or Miller? So actually, especially if you're dealing with the Mariners, I think the centerpiece of the deal, I don't want to necessarily call him a centerpiece because I think you'd still have to give up a decent prospect with him. But Ryan Mountcastle would be kind of the guy that goes, especially I think I explained this early on stream. I think the way that happens is Christian Walker, I think, probably ends up with the Yankees. And I think he's a guy that the Mariners really wanted as their first baseman to add some more power because the Mariners have no offense. I don't know what it is, but they simply couldn't produce offensively last year. They go in, they have way too many arms. They need to offload some arms. They also want to offload a little bit of Castillo's contract. That's why I keep bringing him up. They offload him while also getting a guy in Mountcastle who they instantly can slide into their number 5, number 4 slot in the lineup. He's now your power hitting first baseman, a good glove over there. And while I understand people don't necessarily want to see Mountcastle go, it's a guy that I think is expendable, especially if you then put Mayo over at first base to kind of play the platoon that he and O'Hearn have been playing. And I think that's kind of the route that I would take is send Mountcastle and another decent prospect, probably in the Dylan Beavers range, and then probably a lower end guy. And I think that gets the job done. If you're going for a Castillo, if you're going for a Miller or a Logan Gilbert, you probably have to give up another higher end prospect along with Mountcastle.
Yeah, and the Orioles, they've moved on from a lot of guys. Guys have graduated, right? Their prospect depth is not as, they don't have as much of it anymore, but it's not like their farm system is all of a sudden bad. It's not like they have the worst farm system in baseball. I mean, they still have pieces to move off of. But I think at this point, when you talk about some of those guys who have big league experience, I know Heston's been a topic of conversation. Heston, I think, is a part of their future. Like, they are all in on Heston, at least in terms of him. And I know they said that O'Neill's going to be a pretty regular player for them, both corner spots. But I feel like they want to make room for Heston. Obviously, it feels like Mountcastle would be the vet because if you don't put him in a deal, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place with Kobe Mayo in what you do with him. Because, do you platoon the 2 of them at first? I mean, obviously there are concerns about the third base defense and kind of what that looks like. So it feels like if the Orioles, and I know we talked about it last year and we're talking about it again now, but it just feels like the Orioles are in a spot right now where you have 2 months before pitchers and catchers, or honestly might be less. I keep forgetting when it actually is, but it's about 2 months before pitchers and catchers report. By the time that happens, and I think we're going to see a little different shift, Zach, in terms of how this offseason goes, because a lot of the Boris clients are signing early. I don't think we're going to see nearly as many guys still available come spring training than we did last season. So you have about 2 months to figure it out. And a team, but this is the difficult part of it being the offseason, is some teams have a specific path that they want to go with, whether they want to rebuild and offload guys or whether they want to bring in and be buyers. Now, obviously, that changes over the course of the season based off of how well you do. Maybe a team that's like, we're rebuilding, all of a sudden is absolutely tearing it up, and they're like, oh, wait, now we're actually buyers, and our guys aren't available anymore. And all of a sudden, you were kind of scoping out a guy maybe at the trade deadline, and all of a sudden, that team's like, yeah, sorry, we're going for a run. So now is the time. Plus, the market, it takes a lot less to get a guy. Again, if that Corbin Burns deal happened at the trade deadline, we'd be talking about maybe Samuel Basallo. We'd be talking about a high-end prospect.
Without a doubt.
Not that Joey Ortiz and DL Hall weren't good prospects and good young players, but we'd be talking about a much more lucrative prospect for Milwaukee. So I think this is the time to do it. Ryan and I talked about this. I know you and I have talked about this, Zach. It's about opportunity and time. Plus, you get a full year of the guy, right? If the Orioles have gotten Burns at the trade deadline, it's a rental. And I get that, rentals without the year on the contract, it maybe brings down the price.
If it is for a guy who is a 1-year rental, if you get him in the offseason before, you can extend him a qualifying offer, which then in return gets you a draft pick. If you get him at the deadline or in season, you cannot do that. So it's also for the sake of, if the Orioles do lose Corbin Burns, they get a draft pick for that, which will probably be in the first round, competitive. And if they would have gotten them at the deadline, not only are you giving up more, but you're also not getting that draft pick if he goes elsewhere.
Yeah, most definitely. And before we get into our next topic, I want to shout out Blake real quick. Shout out to you, Blake. First of all, love and appreciate you guys as always, and glad to see you live again. Unfortunately, it has the feel of the same old Orioles of bargain shopping, being cheap no matter what new owner says. Yeah, we're glad to be doing it. Again, we go live after every Ravens game, but obviously it's not quite the grind that baseball season is in terms of being live every night, and something that I certainly have missed. And Zach probably only misses it like 75% because
my God, you make a singular comment about how you didn't want to show after a loss, and this is the shit I get.
Yeah, there you go. So we're glad to be here, and I get the disappointment. Like, I'm disappointed myself, right? I think that with all of the fun that the winter meetings brings to the table and all of the excitement and possibilities that happen at the winter meetings, sometimes obviously they get super crazy, other times they don't. Plus, I really do feel like the Soto deal to kick it off just set a precedent of like, okay, it's all these dominoes are about to fall and everybody's going to be signed by the time the meetings are over. But obviously it doesn't necessarily work that way. So,
yeah, and like we've said, it's the second day of winter meetings, there's so much still left to be done. So many, like we said, some big names have gone off the board, but there are still going to be 60, 70 free agents that get signed over the next 3-4 weeks, if not more. Probably teams going to grab 3 or 4 guys, over 150 guys. Like, this is still like, yes, the big names are fun, but it comes down to how this team is going to be built. We haven't even talked about the bullpen. There's still room for, improvement in the bullpen. Talk about David Robertson. Tanner Scott's out there. It's funny. It feels like everyone's so focused on the starting pitching where they've, if anything, lost guys like Jacob Webb and Danny Coulomb this offseason. Yes, you're getting back Felix Bautista from the injury, but the bullpen still needs work. it is still one of those things that needs work where they're going to have to improve. So, yes, it's fun when the big names come off the board, when you get a big name, but this team probably needs to make 4 or 5 major league moves if they want to compete next year. That means probably 2 arms in the bullpen, another starter, probably another bench or another starter to another bench bat or starter, whether that's in the infield or the outfield.
Yeah, and again, I guess, the Orioles have made 2 moves with O'Neill and Sanchez, and I just feel like with the way that the Yankees have gotten freed and the Blue Jays make their deal, I know Red Sox fans, again, there's Red Sox fans, if you go on like Red Sox Twitter, you follow Red Sox people, just shambles all the way around.
It's
all
incredible.
the way around. I mean, they were a team that was like, oh yeah, it's going to be Fried and Teoscar, like easy. Like that's it. And now Fried is off the board. They don't feel confident in Corbin. Teoscar still could go to Boston. I feel like that still could happen. But there's also a possibility he goes back to LA and just kind of runs it back there. So I don't know, man. It was never all going to be solved by the time the winter meetings were over. They've obviously, if we take what they've done at face value, they wanted guys who could obviously hit the long ball. And for O'Neill, they wanted a guy who could mash against left-handed pitching, which they did not have in their lineup for the most part last season.
Yep. And we talked to Brandon Hyde earlier today at the winter meetings. Ryan was talking to him. Hyde even admitted last year one of their biggest struggles against left-handed pitchers. He said that was something that killed them, and they wanted that right-handed bat to be able to help them there. So that's why they got O'Neill.
Yeah. So it's just, and it's also all of the inter-division rival talk, like about Tony maybe going to one of these AL East teams, Corbin being linked to a bunch of them. Like there are all those conversations happening, and the Orioles are actually the one that took the division guy away from the Red Sox in Tyler O'Neill. So who knows? Maybe it's a Santander for O'Neill swap. I know Orioles fans probably wouldn't feel super great about that. But again, it's like, it's about not opportunity, but it's about skill set. And I don't want to sit here on Tuesday, December 10th, at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time and declare the Orioles offseason a failure, because I think there's still a long way to go. Right? I think we're going to be sitting here in even a month talking about a different team. We can look back on this conversation we're having today and be like, man, we didn't know that the Orioles were about to do this, that, and the other thing. But I just think it's when you look at Santander versus O'Neill or Burns versus whoever else is out there, that on the surface is a downgrade. Both of those moves are downgrades. And for a team that's trying to compete for a World Series,
not ideal.
It's not ideal. It's tough. So I understand. But yeah, all right. You know what, Spirit Bomb, we're just going for it. Season's over. So, we're done. See you in 2025. Actually, that's in like 20 days. So
see you in 20 days. See you in 2026.
Yeah. All right.
It's over. Call it. But Kevin, I agree. It's so long off season, and we're going to be sitting here in a month talking probably about some of the same needs that we're talking about right now. Because, like we said, they acquired Corbin in February. It's a long ways off of this thing being over. Pitchers and catchers don't report for another 60 days. So they got time. It sucks to see guys, obviously, if Corbin and Tony go elsewhere. It sucks, to see the big names like Fried go to the Yankees. Weird. I feel like people are downplaying that the Yankees still lost Soto. Like all of a sudden Yankees got Fried and people are like, look at the Yankees making moves. I'm like, the Yankees lost their most prized possession of the last 15 years. I'm like, let's all simmer down here for a second. I'm not sold on this, the whole, obviously it's cliche, the season's over. I think it's day 2 of the winter meetings. I think there's still a long way to go. I think the Blue Jays are making weird moves right now. Don't really understand the Jimenez trade, just eating a lot of money and got worse. I don't understand it, but I digress. I think the Orioles still have opportunity out there, especially trade market, to make a splash.
Yeah. And I see Steven talking about how is getting a higher average and OBP guy over Santander for cheaper a downgrade. It's going to come down to health. What is going to come down to? That's what it's going to come down to. Plus leadership,
Without a doubt.
right? If you lose Tony, you lose the heartbeat of the team, one of the top leaders on the team. And, someone's going to have to come in and replace that. So again, if O'Neill can stay healthy for the full season, I think that, again, is he going to mash the same amount of homers that Tony did last year? I mean, possibly. I mean, it's a tall task, but maybe. But if he stays healthy, then I think maybe you can even call it a push or a slight upgrade, depending on how it looks, especially with the Wall coming in, right? With the Wall coming in, and Hyde, Elias have talked about how that has been a selling point to some of these guys. It was a selling point to O'Neill. With the Wall coming in, it's like that. So if he can stay healthy for the full season, then I think you're talking about at least a push move between Santander and Tyler O'Neill, hopefully. But the injury history is pretty lengthy. It's pretty concerning. Hopefully he can put it together and be healthy in 2024, or I guess 2025. But it's just a matter of replacing Tony's leadership and also being able to get him on base a little more, because I know with Tony and Steven, I see your point here about guys getting on base. Sometimes it was homer or bust for Tony. Felt like that a lot of the time. Whereas Tyler O'Neill, again, can get on base in multiple different ways, or at least feels like he can do it more consistently. But if he's on the bench for 60 games, it doesn't necessarily help you when you need him. So it's going to come down to health to me. That is where that move is like, okay, could be a pretty big downgrade if he doesn't play, because you're losing that plus maybe leadership. But who knows how it's going to end up.
Yeah. So I think there's still so much unwritten about this offseason. Sure. I'm seeing a lot of buzz that it is going to probably be Walker to the Mets to the Yankees. Wrong New York team.
Walker Buehler or Christian Walker?
Christian Walker. Probably it's looking there. At least from what I'm seeing, it's going to be around 3 years, $20 million each.
Is that being reported?
I'm seeing it from some people.
Oh, so you got connections.
No, Kevin, I don't. I'm just seeing stuff online.
So you got it like that, huh? You got it like that.
Stuff online.
I asked if someone reported it, and you said you're seeing it.
Yeah, it's just I'm just saying what the streets are saying, Kevin. What the streets are talking.
Okay. The streets, aka Zach Bollinger, #sourced up. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm seeing, and this is from is that the Yankees don't believe Arenado is a fit for them.
Yeah.
And the name that they're hearing the most is Christian Walker. So, where do you think the Astros actually trade Kyle Tucker?
No, they're not that stupid.
Yeah, I feel like it's just going to be they get Bregman back and kind of roll it back from there. I don't know if Bregman really goes anywhere. Maybe Phillies.
This is literally kind of what I'm going off of.
Hey, if the internet says it's true, it's true. Never forget.
I trust this source though, because they wouldn't put it out there if they weren't they don't like to do this stuff. I'll just say that. So like they were very. We've had him on the Ryan Rifkin show. So
man, this is vague. Like this is like.
No, I mean I'm just. Point out there.
Is this like for public consumption and you're just not?
It's Brian Garcia.
Okay.
Fireside Yankees is saying stuff he's hearing. But I didn't want to just because what's it called? He said that and then he was like, I don't ever want to do this again, like breaking this news again.
Oh my God, I've done it twice and
I've
done it twice and it is the worst. It is the worst experience, especially because my first time the news didn't come out for a couple days. Like it happened, but the news didn't come out. For those who don't know, it was Lamar getting COVID. And I reported it 2 days before anybody else had it. And it didn't. So everybody was like, you know what you're talking about. Like, you're just making up stuff. And then 2 days later it came out and everyone's like, okay, yeah, sorry. And I'm just like, yeah, it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't want to put him out there in case it is wrong, and then everyone's like, well, Ryan Garcia, because he was even tweeted out after, he's like, if this is wrong, I'm so sorry. If it's right, though, I'm still never doing this again.
Yeah, that it's I don't blame him. Like I know multiple people also who share that. I mean, the second one I did was Ardarius Washington as an undrafted free agent, and everybody wanted him. And I think me and it was like one other person reported it. And Ardarius, for those who don't know, and for those who aren't Ravens fans listening here, Ardarius Washington was supposed to be a 3rd-round pick. He went undrafted. He was pissed, like just pissed. And he had agreed to a deal with Baltimore on the first day, like right after the draft. But the Ravens don't announce their free agency class, their undrafted class, for like a couple of days. And Ardarius posted no confirmation of it. And so everyone's like, this better be true. This better be true. And then like 4 days later, like I was losing sleep over it. Like 4 days later, they finally announced their undrafted class. And obviously he was there. And I'm just like, no, I can't. I'm not.
You got lucky.
You got it. Someone else, you got it. You got it.
Yeah, you got lucky, kid. So if that does not happen, it's Ryan's fault. If it does happen, 3 years, 20 to 22 million each. So that'd be about 60 to 66 million over 3 years. If that's right, you heard it here first from Ryan. So
there you go. So yeah,
any last thoughts, Kevin?
No, just winter meetings wrap up Thursday, right? So one more full day.
Yeah, one more full day. Then we'll see kind of what happens from there. If anything happens, we will be live, obviously, if the Orioles do anything. If Burns or Santander sign, we will probably be going live as well for that. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're new. Go live after every single Orioles game, Ravens game. Big news breaks. We're going to go live, obviously, with everything going on with the winter meetings. We want to stop by. If Corbin or Anthony Santander sign, we will probably be live as well. So turn on the notification button. We don't do this usually. Turn on the notification button if you do. See when we go live immediately. And yeah, Kevin, last thoughts, final things to say.
I'll pull up Rod's question. What if the Orioles sign Sasaki? Would that be a win in your eyes? Successful winter meetings? Absolutely. 100%.
I would fall to my knees. That would be, I think he has the potential to, maybe not right away because he is young, but eventually be a guy who is a top 5 to 10 starter in baseball. That would be
that would absolutely be enough. 100%.
I would. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So hit that like and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. And that'll do it for this edition of Kevin and Zach React.